Hello there, I'm Siantrai, and welcome back to the channel. Today, we're going to be speaking about Leo Ascendants. Leo Ascendants are very interesting. Leo is ruled by the Sun, so here we have an Ascendant which is embodying the dignified, royal, in a way, destined dynamic that comes with the energy of Leo. It's a very profound sign. They're all profound signs. But Leo is one which, by definition, captures well our attention. In many ways, each ascendant has an archetype. Obviously, one of the ways we can view the archetype of Leo ascendant would be to describe them as royalty, a king, a queen. King in particular. We can get to a little bit, perhaps, as to why there's a distinction there in this particular instance, although, of course, there are queenly Leo ascendant women as well. But it also, if you think of the animal which is often associated with Leo, which is a lion, you can learn a lot about the characteristics of Leo ascendants by studying that animal as well. We'll see that when we get into the relationship section. And just in general, there's always been a linkage between those two things for a reason. Speaking of cats. So, Leo ascendants are very naturally gregarious, charismatic, charming. They have a magnetism about them which makes almost everything that they say and do come across as iconic. It's like they have an ability to snapshot the things that they do or say, or the way that they dress and appear and present themselves, and have a way of almost imprinting it into the collective mind and giving it a dazzle, giving it something that draws attention and making it interesting, right? So an example of this type of magic could be, for example, clothing brands. The clothing brands, it's like you got a pair of jeans and you got another pair of jeans. Nobody's sitting there looking at the seams of the jeans and being like, these seams are magnificent, these are the best jeans. No, it's just like it's got a name on it. It's got a brand, and everyone just associates the sort of social status esteem with the brand itself. They don't have to look at how great the seams look, right? Not to say that they don't have good seams, but you kind of get the idea that what the Leo energy is doing, it's something a little more abstract. It's not just about the practical, gritty details. They can make something iconic. So for a Leo ascendant, fame gravitates very naturally to them, almost effortlessly, although that's not without its complications in their case. But recognition, favor by certain types of people is pretty much a certainty. Now, I feel like Leo has this reputation for being attention seeking, but particularly in a shallow way. And this perspective is rather prevalent in the fields, like the kind of groups that study tropical astrology in particular. It's of course, it's almost a meme, and every sign has their memes in tropical astrology. But I feel like in order to truly understand what Leo is, you have to dive deeper. The nakshatras that Leo has in it tell you there's a lot more to Leo than just wanting attention in this sort of shallow way. Not to say that wanting attention is even shallow, by the way. In and of itself, it can be. It can be something that leads to that or is part and parcel of it, but not inherently so. But the nakshatras, we have Purva Falguni, we have Magha, so and Uttara Falguni. So we have Purva Falguni, Uttara Falguni, and Magha first. So here in Purva Falguni, we can see the luxuriating qualities of Leo. You kind of have the image of a noble person or a royal person, and they're sort of lounging on a chair, being fed grapes and being fanned by, you know, beautiful people, right? So that is kind of the energy of Purva Falguni. It's enjoying the sort of richness and wealth and pleasure that comes with regality, that comes with royalty, right? It's one of the perks of being royals. There were a lot of responsibilities too. A lot of royals, for example, couldn't choose who they wanted to marry, whereas many peasants were allowed to marry for love. Not to say that it was better to be a peasant, but just showing you the dynamics here, right? But Magha is a nakshatra which is ruled by Ketu, which is an energy which exists and exists beyond the world. It transcends the world. All right. So Magha is a fundamentally very spiritual nakshatra, profoundly so. And so to image Leo as if it's only about attention, or it's only a type of celebrity energy, or that it's only something about kind of being on stage or being well known or being an actor or an artist like a musician or fame, there's some very fundamental core elements that show you there's a lot more to it. Magha is the nakshatra of the ancestors, the Pitris. It has to do with things which are passed down through bloodlines. It has to do with special gifts, special destinies, and special responsibilities. So, for example, in many kingdoms, it was often said that the royal family, the king that was chosen, uh, it was destiny that they were chosen. It was granted to them by heaven that they would be chosen, right? So this type of destiny, this exists beyond the world. It's a type of authority, a type of leadership that doesn't come from the place that normal authority in society comes from. Normal authority in society is more Capricorn, 10th house, Saturn, right? Even an Aquarius, which is more about the structure of society rather than the institutions and authorities of society, which is Capricorn. But they're obviously both interrelated because Saturn rules them both. But that type of authority is given to a person as a result of their direct efforts. So if someone wants to become a lawyer or a CEO or a politician, they have to work to get to that position. Right? They have put in their own efforts to do those types of things. No one's born in the United States, for example, and it's like, you're a politician, right? No, it's like, you're going to be born to be president. Like, no, you have to earn that. You have to be voted into office, right? So the authority and the privileges that are granted to Leo they come from heaven. It's different. It's not granted by society. So in alignment with this, obviously, if we look at history, we can see a lot of people who were misusing this statement. I'm chosen by heaven, therefore you all obey and bow to me and serve and do everything that I say, right? But practically speaking, when someone has this as the ascendant, one of the things that this is indicating is that who they are in the world is, and how they are expressing themselves and presenting themselves to the world, is actually an element of their divine mission. They're intertwined, particularly, of course, when the ascendant is in Magha Nakshatra. But this element is going to be prevalent to some extent, even in the other nakshatras. So when a Leo expresses themselves and portrays themselves in a certain way, they're performing a kind of divine function when this is being done in kind of like proper divine alignment, right? Because there are higher and lower octaves to things. So someone can abuse an energy. Aries can be an energy which pummels and beats someone to a pulp. It could be an energy which you use to climb a mountain and succeed, or to protect somebody, or to build an engine, right? Aries can do all those things. So Leo's the same way. There's octaves to this stuff. So at the higher octave, we're talking about a type of divine responsibility. right? It's so interesting that the core nakshatra, because the Magha nakshatra is the throne, its symbol is the throne. And when we think of Leo, we think of royalty, therefore we think of the throne. Magha, therefore, in many ways could be viewed as something like a core principle to the Leo energy. And so, with it being ruled by Ketu, I find that intriguing to understand about what Leos and Leo ascendants are truly about. Because Ketu is an energy which is naturally detached from materialism, from concerns of the material world. Its goal is actually liberation, transcendence. So, we find, for example, if you put Ketu in someone's first house or conjunct the sun, that they let go of their ego. It's a sign of egolessness, right? One of the signs, obviously. There are placements in there that can shift things up a bit. But that is a big part of it. They let go of their ego and their ego dissolves. So when you have, isn't it fascinating that in the heart of the sign which we consider to be all about ego, we have it being ruled by the planet which specifically dissolves ego. And so I feel like one of the things that this is demonstrating is that actually at the core of what it means to be royalty and to be a king, it's actually about sort of carrying out a divine mission and helping others to kind of achieve a sort of enlightenment. Like, what is the point of what a royal does, what a leader does? A leader is meant to, they kind of rise to this position of power. They're given this authority. The authority is not meant to make that person feel super powerful. The authority is given to them by the people so that things can be arranged to benefit everyone, right? So the king is like, okay, we're going to plant crops over here. This is what we're going to do with our economy. This is what we're going to do with our housing. Boom, 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 boom. And the goal, ideally, is for everyone to thrive and flourish and prosper. And so the king is actually doing this selflessly. It's not really about the king. It's not really about the royal person, fundamentally. It's actually selflessness that is the hallmark of a good king. But so, in addition to this, a king also and a noble also has an important role, which is to be a role model. Everyone looks at the king. This is also why Leo represents celebrities, for example, like people who we admire. We call them stars, right? That's Leo energy, fundamentally. And so, what's important to understand is that it is a part of the Leo's destiny, their dynamic, their archetype and energy, to attract attention. But see, the lower octave is when the attention that they're attracting is then used to feed their ego in a selfish way. And they're like, this is all for me. All of this attention, this is all for me. It's because I'm so great. It's because me personally, I'm the best. And, it kind of becomes all, very, very selfish, right? But I think when Leos are at their best, when the divine energy is working well, they realize that the attention being directed at them is so that they can then be a good shining example like the sun of divine righteous principle, because the sun is a righteous dharmic planet, shining that light of dharma as a living example, a role model, an inspiration. And then when people give their attention to the Leo ascendant, they're then reciprocally inspired and are able to align to an ideal. All right. And of course, when this is being done properly, it's being done selflessly in the mind of the Leo person, so that they're not just kind of like bringing the person into a cult. That's like the personality cults would be the shadow side of that dynamic, right? So this is where some of the temptation comes in with a Leo is when they start getting all this attention, how they actually handle that, how they process that with their ego. Are they able to remain selfless and detached in some extent and say, okay, how am I able to use this attention being directed towards me for the benefit of everyone? Right? When you start thinking like that, um, it's like the full destiny of the Leo ascendant can bloom. This is the really kind of the understanding, which is like a key which unlocks the true prosperity and majesty of this placement and of Leo energy in general. Wherever it is, you're going to see how it expresses itself in that area of life. If you got certain planets in Leo or whatever it is, but that's how this energy works. So Leo ascendants, you're here to inspire people. You are here to express yourself, to present yourself to the world, and be a living embodiment of something wonderful, something amazing. But make sure it's something righteous. So a lot can be seen about who you are by really studying your sun position. It's really, really important for any ascendant or to study the first house lord. For sun and Leo ascendants, it's very particularly intriguing, I think, because both the first house and the sun have to do with sort of like our feelings about self. So the sun is our actual self, and the first house is our concept of self, our personality, which we construct. And these two things for Leo ascendants are always in very close alignment. All right, say you've got somebody who's got a Capricorn ascendant, but their sun is in Pisces. They may present themselves and interact with the people in a very stoic, business-like, professional, grounded way, when in fact they're very dreamy and detached and otherworldly, right? But for a Leo ascendant, who they are and how they present themselves are very intricately linked. And the stronger that link is, the more kind of successful they can be in life, the stronger their first house will be. So they'll be able to get over illnesses faster. They'll be able to succeed more readily in whatever their endeavor is. All those things are important. And to see the strength of the sun, look at the sign it's placed in, look at the house it's placed in, look at the aspects to the sun, the conjunctions. Those things, conjunctions, for example, in particular, they are really going to, not in particular, all these things are very impactful, but they're really going to change this dynamic significantly. A single planet placed in the first house for a Leo ascendant is really going to create a huge kind of like shift in the way that their energy works in the world. I've noticed that it's particularly noticeable with Leos for some reason. Perhaps it's the fact that it really hits in the area of self. Whatever planets in the first house are conjuncting the sun, it gets woven in there to both what they are at their core and what they're projecting. And because they're the sun, what they're projecting is really felt and affected by everyone. So it can be a little more noticeable when something is interacting with that energy there. Well, that was an interesting wandering exploration through a bit of Leo energy here. So let's ground it into this particular placement. Some of the things that you can anticipate if you are a Leo ascendant, or if you know Leo ascendants, is they tend to have a very noticeable, iconic, almost palpable sense of style. They have a way of dressing, of presenting themselves, it's a little bit hard to describe, but they'll have a unique style in some way. It could be something simple. Like, for example, Donald Trump is a Leo ascendant, and he took a simple red hat and made it iconic. And everybody not everybody, there's some people who hate the red hats, but a lot of people want to wear these red hats, right? He took something and made it iconic. So Leo ascendants have this ability. They can have something signature about themselves. Like they like to wear they would like to wear scarves, or they like to wear robes, or they like to wear watches. Like they'll have a certain type of affinity for a type of garment or accessory, and they'll really tend to exemplify the high quality end of that type of clothing or accessory. And then another element of it is that they'll kind of project it to where they'll kind of make other people want to have those things. So like if they really like expensive Rolexes, they'll be like, look at how great these Rolexes are. This is so fantastic. It's the best Rolexes. And everyone's like, I want a Rolex now too. And then they're like hanging out with a bunch of people wearing Rolexes. He's like, yeah, I inspired all these people to buy the Rolexes. They have these kinds of abilities. And they can do it with pretty much anything. So Leo ascendants are absolutely phenomenal in business, right? They're great artists. They're really good at a lot of things, to be quite honest. They tend to have a natural skill at kind of just being good at things without having to try much. They kind of have an effortless skill, which will emerge in a wide variety of areas. But that doesn't necessarily mean that they have put in the work to master those skills. That you have to see other placements in the chart to really see how far they're able to take it. So as a result of this, Leo ascendants who haven't fully kind of grounded themselves or worked through some of their Saturn energy, they may sort of create something and present it as the best, even if it's not like, doesn't have any real substance behind it. So you kind of get a charlatan sort of vibe sometimes, if this energy is working at a lower octave. But at a higher octave, uh, you can see just very high quality products. They're always looking for the best in whatever it is that they do and participate in. So if they're going to recommend something, whether it's a brand of clothing or a type of food or a type of herb, they're always going to try to recommend to you the best of that thing. And then they're going to want to tie the recommendation which they gave back into themselves. So like if they recommended to you this awesome food that you start trying and your skin starts glowing and you're super healthy and you're like, this is the best food ever, they kind of want you to like kick them back some credit for it. Like, man, this guy, he turned me on to this food and it was so good. He's just awesome for doing that. You know what I mean? The Leo Sen is just like, yeah, yeah, it really works for them. It really nourishes their soul quite a bit. So it's a little bit about Leo ascendants. But let's pop the hood a little bit because there's a lot going on beneath the surface. Leo ascendants, they have this magnificent ability to always present themselves on their best foot, no matter what it is they're going through. They could be, going through jail. They can be climbing out of a ditch. They could be doing whatever it is, but they'll do it so magnificently. They'll make it so awesome. The fact that they're doing this, like, look at what I'm going through. Look at, they have this way of telling a story almost, or creating a story about what they're doing to make it absolutely awesome. All right. So it's very important for Leo ascendants to basically be perceived as awesome all of the time. So there's a lot of benefits to this, a lot of reasons why they like it. But one of the things that this does is actually makes it a little bit difficult for them to kind of share genuine intimacy with people. And so they can actually carry quite a bit of burden in their hearts, because if you're always presenting yourself at your best, you're never, you're always showing how great you are. That means you're not showing when you're wounded. You're not showing as much when you're sad or when you're not confident or when you're feeling needy or something like that, right? So those are the moments, of course, when we need people connecting with us the most. And so Leo ascendants, they have a difficulty finding balance between, well, how do I let my guard down and allow someone to see me when I'm not in my refined, magnificent, glorious state, and still have them respect me afterwards, and still have the stars in their eyes afterwards when they look at me again. And so essentially, if a Leo ascendant thinks that by them showing something about themselves, you'll lose that star in your eye that you have when you look at them, they probably won't show you. All right. So yeah, it's a little bit of an energy where it can be a bit lonely at the top sometimes. You know, it's like when you present yourself and create such an image of yourself, it can be a bit lonely when there's no one on the inside of the image. So this is a journey that Leo ascendants go on, and depending on a lot of the other placements in the chart, of course, this will they'll have tendencies in different directions, and things will tend to play out differently. But this is definitely an element of their life. Their second house is Virgo, and this represents their early upbringing, their early family, how they handle their finances, quite a few things, their values, their quality of their voice. And it's very interesting that the homes that they tend to be brought up in, the families that they tend to have, they can be quite critical. They can be quite they're very sort of grounded, normal, mundane sort of people. Mundane, not necessarily in a bad way, just, in a sort of good citizen way, you know, in a simple, humble, but good way. The family can be like that. So the Leo ascendant, they have a very magnanimous way of viewing themselves. And they want to express themselves in the world in this profound and amazing and dazzling way that just wows everyone. And here they have this family, which is like very critical, very kind of just like down to the little nitty gritty things, like how you gonna get a, it's like imagine you have a Leo ascendant, he's like, I want to go be an artist, and they're like, well, how are you gonna get a job and be an artist at the same time? Maybe you should think more practically a little bit and think about your finances and think about how to organize those things. So because of this, obviously this is well intentioned by the family. Everyone wants their I mean, all good parents want their children to do well and family members to do well. But this can be a little bit of a damper on the Leo ascendant spirit. So they can kind of grow up feeling a bit misunderstood, a little bit like the ugly duckling, where they kind of have it's like a swan that's black when it's a baby and is brought up in a family full of ducks, and everyone's like, you're a weird duck. And then it grows up and it's like, oh, I'm a swan. No wonder it was like I didn't fit in with all the ducks. Leo ascendants feel like this a lot. They really, ugly duckling, I think, would be one of a book probably most Leo ascendants would relate to. But one of this has a very interesting effect on them in a variety of ways. One of the things is that it inspires them to be more authentic. It actually pushes them to be more expressive of what's really truly about, like, native to them. It's a little bit like if you've been in an environment where you've been deprived of water or something for an extended period of time, and then you find out there's a river, over that mountain, you probably go and get over that mountain pretty dang fast. So there's always very interesting relationships, I think, between the ascendants and their second houses, where they tend to kind of create each other. And this is also true with relationships between the axes and things like that as well. Looking at these dynamics is so fascinating. It tells you a lot. So, out of this sort of mundane environment, out of this sort of a little bit maybe restrictive from their perspective, maybe a little bit too normal, a little bit too concerned with everyday affairs. It's like somebody, who grows up in a family and their family just loves 9 to 5s, and they're just like, you should get a 9 to 5, you should have a stable job. And he's like, I want to go be a dancer, or I want to go be, a politician, or I want to go do this. And it just seems very untethered and ungrounded compared to what the family views are. But the family is often very intelligent. They can be a bit sort of emotionally reserved. And we'll also get into that a little bit with Scorpio and being in their fourth house and how that affects their family and early upbringing. But, Leos are actually deeply subconsciously yearning for emotional intimacy, but they don't tend to get that from their early family, right? And so then they tend to push the emotional intimacy needs into their 12th house and just be like, you know what, I'm so awesome, I don't even need emotional intimacy. I think I just need everyone talking about how glorious I am. And that does work for a while, and they are rather glorious, but they still have emotional needs. And so working out that dynamic is most beneficial to the Leo ascendant for their long-term happiness, for sure. When it comes to their finances, this is a very interesting dynamic to have. Virgo here being with the finances, it naturally makes them very calculative with their money, so they can be quite smart. They can be quite smart when it comes to investments. They can be quite smart when it comes to finances. They can be quite smart when it comes to kind of like finagling the details of their assets in various ways. They can be very intelligent with the way that they handle these things. That's very, very good for them. But Virgo is an energy which has an inherently sort of unstable energy to it. There's like a nervousness. Wherever Virgo is in somebody's chart, they're kind of nervous in that area. It's like, oh, they're like worried. They're like, it's like when having a tightly wound nervous system pertaining to that particular area of life. So Leo ascendants, they tend to, obviously with Taurus in the 10th and with Leo in the first, they present themselves like they're the wealthiest, they're the most prosperous, they are the most abundant, and they oftentimes are. But even if they are, regardless of the situation, they will internally feel very nervous about their assets. They feel a little bit like, I've really got to make sure this stuff is in order, because it's like a area where they feel like if they lost that, a lot of other things would come tumbling down. There are other signs, where it's just like, if I don't have any money, I'm just gonna go with the flow. I might sleep on the beach. I know people like that. I know plenty of people like that, right? No problem. Leo ascendants, they're really kind of like, I need my money. You know what I mean? Because that allows them to maintain their sense of pride in the lifestyle, and all, uphold the mechanism that they want to uphold in the world. It's very important for them. So it's very important to look at Mercury in the chart, to understand the condition of that, because if Mercury is afflicted or weak in some way, or there's some harsh aspects, it can show ups and downs with the finances. It can really show like restriction of resources, because Virgo has to do with sort of like a highly intelligent management of limited resources, is one of the things that Virgo represents. So as a result of that, Leo ascendants may sometimes actually find themselves in situations where they have limited resources, and they have to make the best of it, so that they develop the ability to best handle their assets and resources. So if you learn that skill before you end up in situations where the universe puts you in situations like that, you can sometimes like kind of get a one up on it. So basically, study finances. Get very good at handling your assets. Handle your assets responsibly. Be frugal when it comes to your savings, for example. Those things will make Virgo feel good. It'll literally chill out your nervous system, and it will make the sort of ebbs and flows sort of less, right? If you handle those things well. But if you start doing things like you've got a savings, and you kind of, say you invest it into something that's a little bit, you don't know about it, and then the investment fluctuates, then you lose your money, or you gamble it, or you're just doing something with the savings that you're not supposed to be doing. It's like the weakness of that is like it hits a weak spot, and it spreads to a lot of the other parts of the chart for Leo ascendant. So very, very important to be calculative intentionally with the money, and you also naturally have the ability to do that once you get in the flow of it. So third house for Leo ascendant is Libra, and this is very interesting. A king, when he speaks to people in his company, king is meant to be well liked. A king is meant to be elegant, eloquent, and charming. Elegant and eloquent, two distinct things. So Libra here makes it very much like their communication can be kind of like silk. It's like when Leo ascendants speak, it kind of just feels good. It feels good to receive it. So it makes them natural orators, especially if other things in the chart support it. This is why, kings naturally get up on stage as celebrities or politicians, and they speak, and people are like, wow, that sounds good. No one wants to, have a king get up on stage and he starts speaking, and everyone was like, oh, oh, no, stop. No, they want to feel good. They want to feel inspired. They want to feel like a connection, right? And it's so interesting that Libra is the energy, the sign that pertains to one-on-one connections. One-on-one connections, right? So when a Leo ascendant is speaking to even a group of people, they have the ability to make it feel like they're just speaking to just you and me, just one-on-one. Like they have this ability to connect with people when they talk, and make that person feel really seen and heard, and make it feel like we have a relationship now, even if we just talked for like 5 minutes. Leo ascendants can do this very, very well. Obviously, this makes them, adept at a wide variety of professions, which like politics and like diplomacy, um, business. A lot of ways this is applicable, right? But this is also interesting in a sense that Venus and Sun, which Sun is ruling Leo, so kind of have to look at how all the planets relate to the Sun to see how it relates to the Leo ascendant person. Venus and Sun have a difficult relationship. Whenever Venus moves close to the Sun, it gets combust, And Venus becomes very selfish. It's like the water evaporates off, and Venus is just like, I only got enough space to get what I want and what I need. This is the most important thing, is what I want and what I need. We get it, boom. And then, you know, then they'll kind of make other people feel good afterwards if they got everything that they want. So here with this energy, we can find that relationships in general for Leo ascendants can be kind of challenging, and we'll delve deeper into that. Not to say that it's all bad or anything like that, but it's definitely got things that should be understood. But this can actually cause some difficulties and disconnections with the younger siblings. The younger siblings can kind of feel there's an ego issue here. Younger siblings can feel overshadowed, or like the Leo ascendant person, may swallow up too much of the attention, or the Leo ascendant may feel frustrated and want to swallow up more of the attention and not be able to, and then feel like they need to go. So there's a difficulty here with kind of like establishing the sort of brother sister, elder brother, elder sibling, younger sibling dynamic can be difficult to mesh. The Leo ascendant But in general, this placement's really good, and it makes them very, very well liked. Travel can be something which is kind of pleasurable for them when they do it with another person, someone who they're in a relationship with in particular. So if they're kind of just like running errands, or just like, going to spots, around your area and visiting and things like that on little days like picnics or going to the movies and things like that, Leo ascendants really like to do those things with partners, kind of like outings and stuff like that. It makes them real happy. Or they'll do it for their partner if it's not something that they prefer. They'll still naturally be able to get into the flow of that and do it with their partner. So this brings us to Scorpio in the 4th house. Very interesting. I keep saying interesting, and it is, but I need some more words in my lexicon there. Scorpio in the 4th house. This makes the home of Scorpio ascendants a very important place. The home for a Scorpio ascendant is a source of power. It will often be very private. It can be a home, like, even if the person is a celebrity, they're not going to do an episode of Cribs. Like, no one's really going to come to the home. They may bring people to, like, if they have a business, if they've got a second home, maybe if they've got some other things, but they usually will have some very private spaces that nobody in the public knows about, right? There can be occult things or things pertaining to power in the home. So they could have anything from kind of like an altar or a shrine or a source of like some type of magical setup to give them power in the home. It can be they have a secret room where they do certain practices. It could be they have an occult library. It could be that they have a library that's full of psychology books, even in their home. If they're a psychologist, they might have a bunch of stuff pertaining to that in their home. But it'll definitely be something that they're very attached to and controlling of and possessive over. So they are rather dominating in the home space. They'll certainly want elements of the home to be a very particular way. And the reasoning for this, like if someone has a Venus ruled sign in the 4th house, or Venus in the 4th house, something like that, they'll be putting things in their home for the aesthetic, right? Because it looks beautiful, because it feels good. For a Scorpio ascendant, it'll make them feel powerful, or it'll have a sort of practical, magical value. Or it can also have be pertaining to sexual things as well. So their home could be like, they could have like a sex dungeon in their home. Or, they can have like handcuffs and stuff in their, and all kinds of like, harnesses and stuff in their bedroom, stuff like that. So all of those things you can kind of see with Scorpio in the 4th house. So it's kind of like they'll present themselves in a very dynamic and royal and regal and sophisticated way, in public, and they kind of get behind closed doors and they're like, all the kiki, intense, chaotic, like stuff, primal stuff starts to come out, and that's where it comes out, is in the home. So if you're living with a Scorpio ascendant, Do not expect your home life to be chill exactly. They're going to want to be doing things a lot in the home. It could be like, for example, if you're living with them, they could just want to have sex like all the time. Or they could be wanting to, like, like, I don't know, if it was like a fight club or something like that, they could be like having fights in their basement. They're just like having them all the time. You know what I mean? Like, there's going to be something, and there's going to be a lot of activity, and it's going on a lot in the home. So if you're somebody who is like, I love my home to be a Zen space, you've got Moon in the fourth house, you've got Pisces in the fourth house, you've got, something like that, then it can be rather intense to live with a Scorpio ascendant, or with a Leo ascendant. Sorry, Scorpio in the fourth house. So another really interesting thing about this is that their relationship with their mother is very deep. It's not always necessarily harmonious, but it's deep. There can be past life relationships with the mother. There can be, the mother can be very psychically powerful, can have like shamanistic gifts, can have, especially I've noticed in the case of women who have Leo ascendants, their mother matriarchal lineage can be like very magical. Can have people with a lot of spiritual gifts along their matriarchal line. But the mother, either way, there's going to be something very special, very powerful about her. Now, the relationship with the mother can be a bit strained at times, but that depends a lot on the condition of Mars. Scorpio, which is ruled by Mars, and Sun, which rules the first house, Mars and Sun are friends. So that's a good placement to have from that angle when it comes to the friendliness of the ascendant. But when it comes to the fourth house itself, which is the natural house of Cancer, and the moon is debilitated in Scorpio. So as a result of this, the mother can be sick. The mother can be lost in an accident. The mother can, there can be trauma pertaining to the mother. The mother can be sort of like involved in traumatic things. Like she could be, kind of like involved in prostitution or drugs or something of that nature. You can see sometimes, um, there's a lot that goes on with this energy here. But something that will really benefit the Leo ascendant when it comes to this is doing deep healing pertaining to the mother and the matriarchal lineage. Doing this can feel like touching a sore wound in some cases. It can feel really difficult to move through. It's usually kind of like, because Moon is debilitated in Scorpio, it's going to feel bad, like hurtful or painful or just overwhelming on the emotions when the person starts to try to go through and heal that stuff a lot of times with this placement. But when you do it, and you do it well, and you do it thoroughly, great gifts and boons are bestowed upon those who do it successfully. Because there's obviously Scorpio pertains to a source of power wherever it resides. So it's kind of like you face the shadow, and you manage to heal it, and then the shadow presents you with the gift that it was holding. Okay, so healing the mother, there can be karma to pay with the mother, so you might have to take care of your mom in some way. Doing that will heal you a lot. So taking care of the mother can heal you substantially in most cases, unless something other, there might be other things in the chart that make it difficult, but generally speaking. So fifth house for a Leo is Sagittarius. And so this makes Leo ascendants quite intelligent, quite studious. They can be very successful in their early education. They can be kind of spotted early and recognized as like a stellar student or an advanced student. They may skip a grade. They'll definitely kind of tend to be perceived as ahead of their time or above their level for that age. They can be perceived as almost like adults being in a room full of children, because you have the Sagittarius is the higher mind. It's the adult mind. And here is coming into the house of early education. So you have kind of like the mind of a college person, like, you have a college student. In elementary school, you're kind of just like A, B, C, D. Then you get to college and you're supposed to think inquisitively. You're supposed to think philosophically. You're supposed to think dynamically and present this to the teacher, right? So Leo ascendants will demonstrate this ability of dynamic thinking in their early education. And this will impress people to a great degree. So this is one of the blessings in their life that naturally can kind of put them on the fast track early and lead to their success, because Leo has success written all over their chart. You know, look at the first house, you look at the 10th house with Taurus there, you know, a lot of strong things to support this. And the you know, Dharma triangle, the 1, 5, and 9 houses, all being fire, all very strong stuff for success. uh, so due to the fact that they're recognized as exemplary early on, they tend to gain favor. So you can find that mentors and teachers and things like that, they can kind of like notice them and be like, okay, all right, let's let's put this person in a situation where they can kind of grow and exemplify their skills more, and maybe there are opportunities that evolve that allows the Leo ascendant person to take advantage of that and advance themselves in society. When they date, when it comes to their romantic dating style, they are sophisticated. You know, Sagittarius represents dignity, and so does Leo. So you have these things that are like both Jupiter and the Sun have this energy of being regal and dignified. So here you have that layering on top of each other in a very, very nice way, to where when they are romantic, they tend to be well spoken, they tend to be charismatic, they come across like regal, like a Prince Charming, because they have this high level of intelligence. And it's very interesting to note that throughout a lot of human history, really only the upper echelon people of society received educations. Okay. So like when it came to early education, when it came to like going to school, really getting like a full literary education, even learning to read, throughout most of human history, it was only like the elites and like some scribe class people basically that were able to have those skills, which is one of the reasons why Leo and the Sun rules the 5th house, the sign of kings and nobles and royalty, rules the house of early education. Okay, so with Sagittarius in the 5th house, it's like, well, who receives the best education? Isn't it the king? Isn't it the nobles? They receive all the best education when they're young. They receive all the best tutors. You know, it's like Alexander the Great being taught by Aristotle, right? That's what this indicates. You can have a kind of guru or someone who's at a very high level of teaching come and teach them in their early education, or they will just get the best education early on, right? Now, if they don't receive it in a very formal way, because they may even, you know, be presented with education and then leave it and then come back to it. You know, I've seen like stuff like that can happen too, where a lot of Leo ascendants can actually leave their education when it comes to the institution. But keep in mind that back when education was actually, you know, before the Prussian school model, school didn't exist in the way that it exists now in this rigid state. Okay. Right now, school exists in a Capricorn-like state. It's like a rigid institution, like a factory, like ding dong, get here on time, rigid, regurgitate. That's not how 9th house, that's not how Sagittarius learns. Okay? They learn from the guru. So they learn from, if they can't find genuine learning inside the school institution, they'll often leave it. And because Sagittarius is the sign which rules the 9th house naturally, they will try to get their education from life experience. So they will go out into the world and say, okay, you know what? School wasn't enough. I need to learn directly from my experience, from life, by putting myself out in the world, and then I'll gain the wisdom. And they can do it like that. Another thing that this does is it can give Leo ascendants intelligent children. It can give them children who naturally incline themselves and lean toward and magnetize themselves towards righteousness. Now, a lot of this does, of course, depend on where Jupiter's placed. If Jupiter ends up being placed in Capricorn, debilitated, it's like really under heavy affliction, conjunct Rahu, something like that, it can change that dynamic significantly. But in and of itself, it can indeed denote having rather high-level children. Could also indicate having a lot of children, because Jupiter in the 5th house, you know, it like expands and gives you a lot of that thing. So you can have a lot of kids. Think about a king who has a whole bunch of kids, you know, he's got like all these wives and and concubines and stuff like that, and he's got all the kids, you know, there you go. You know, you have this Sagittarius expanding it. And a big part of what a Leo ascendant is going to want to do is they're going to want to transmit their philosophy and their belief system and infuse it deep into the bones and the genes of the children, into their DNA. They really want the children to be saturated with their beliefs and their way of thinking, their way of kind of like the whatever the meaning of that Leo ascendant's life is. They're going to infuse it, and then they want to see that kind of bloom and shine as a result. So there can be some ego energy things going on here. There can be, you know, a bit of well, definitely high standards that the Leo ascendant will have for their children. That could be a little hard on them. But generally speaking, this is a really, really good placement to have kids and kind of just know, like, there's an energy of dharma, of inherently righteous action, which is running through them all the time. You know, I kind of say, like, if you have somebody who has like Virgo in their fifth house or something, it's like, cool, you know, like, you know, your kids are going to be a little more on the prudent side, a little bit more on the contained side. You know, it's not as inclining itself to like going out late night and partying, right? So this placement is a little bit like that. I mean, they may go out. They're definitely going to go out and adventure. The kids, for sure. The kids of the Leo ascendant, they're going to go far and wide and adventure and do very interesting things. But they'll have that goodness, a sense of mind. So when it comes to the sixth house, we have Capricorn here. And this one is, I would say, a challenging placement, though it has its blessings and benefits as well, as do all placements. So Capricorn here, one of the things it can do is it can make Leo ascendants hard workers. You do need to look at the condition of Saturn for that. Saturn, for example, in the sixth house is like the placement for seeing people who are like overworkers. Like they can just work and work and work, and they're like outworking all their other coworkers and stuff like that. So Leo ascendants can sometimes be a bit workaholics. But they can also be lazy sometimes too, depending. They're kind of like a lion, just kind of like laying there in the sun. He's just like, "Yep, this is where I'm at right now." But when they do work, man, they can when they are in the inspiration to do so, they can grind and they can really churn out some amazing things with their day-to-day activities. They can be very ambitious and very disciplined and concentrated, kind of just like hammering at something over and over again over time. Until it develops into something very worthwhile. So it's often said that this placement is really not so great for enemies, in the sense like it gives the Leo ascendant a lot of enemies. You know, you have Capricorn, which is a sign of the battlefield and a sign of reputation and status, and here it's coming into the sixth house of conflicts and things of that nature. So you have this very interesting dynamic because sixth house represents enemies and Capricorn represents your status in society, your success, your achievement. It's kind of like the more a Leo ascendant achieves, sometimes that can like whatever karmas they have to work out in the sixth house will then can kind of like come to the fore to be dealt with. And it's proportionate. So like say they only achieve this much, maybe this much karma will come out. But if they start to achieve this much, well then this much karma might come out, right? So it's like, okay, there are enemies, yes, but the enemies aren't just random, coming from nowhere, just like roll the dice enemies. It's like the enemies are always pertaining to the karma that that person has, right? So you really got to look at, you know, what the Lord of the sixth house is doing, what's conjuncting, what's aspecting. You got to look at D9, D60, all that kind of stuff to really get a full picture here. But, you know, you're definitely going to notice that Leo ascendants don't necessarily have it easy. They get challenged, you know, when it comes to kind of like the grind and the path they take to their success. Now, when it comes to resolving disputes and solving problems, whew, they can come in hard. Like, when you call a Leo ascendant to fix a problem, they come in and their presence can really shake the room. Like they have gravitas. So when they approach a problem, they tend to take a very professional stoic kind of hardline attitude to it. So like, okay, here's how we're gonna go at it. Boom, 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 and they'll come at problems that way. So they're great in situations that require stalwart, almost warrior-like energy, like where they have to kind of stand for something and be like, boom, here's how it is. I'm coming in. We're doing it. Bam, bam, bam. They're great at that. But when it comes to maybe like being good listeners, being diplomatic in order to resolve a problem, like if a problem that they're working on requires like a lot of deep empathy and intuition and like emotions to really resolve the problem, Leo ascendants aren't the best person to deal with that, because they're going to want to be like, look, here's how it is. We can fix it like this. We can fix it like this. We can structure it like this. And, I know you got some feelings and stuff right now, but this is how we set this up and it's going to work, right? So they're very practical with how they want to resolve an issue. And that sometimes works very much in their favor, and sometimes it can work against their favor. And I think a lot of times, like, you have to look at Jupiter, interestingly, to kind of see like how wise the person is in general, to see, because that's one of the, Jupiter and the moon are going to really be two of those planets that's going to help you to understand, like, okay, is this person going to be able to, well, have this very professional and kind of dominating way of dealing with problems, but can they also have the wisdom to know when to kind of be fluid, when to be a bit receptive and a bit yin, to kind of achieve even farther along in their goals when hammering would actually make things worse. So knowing the full picture of that's very, very useful. But it can be a powerful placement, like in legal battles, for example. It can be quite dominating, especially if the person, the Leo ascendant, has already achieved a high status and they go into a legal battle. It's like they can just crush the legal battle sometimes, like just like magically, just like the legal battle goes, under the weight of their authority. But that does depend a bit on what's going on with the Capricorn energy and how much like status they've been able to accrue up until that point in their life, and various other factors. But that is a power that comes with it. So seventh house is Aquarius, and this is the house of relationships, among other things. This is a very interesting, I guess I said interesting again, but it actually is interesting, though, I'm telling you. It's very interesting because Leo ascendants, they love to be adored, and they actually are quite loyal. And loyalty is extremely important for Leo ascendants. Definitely receiving it, and it'll be giving it if the other planets are good too. If Sun is good, then they'll give the loyalty as well as receive it. They might just receive it if they got a very afflicted Sun or something like that. But so they're loyal. But Aquarius is the sign of groups. So it's like a network circle. So sometimes you can find that it can be difficult for a Leo ascendant to settle down with one person. It's kind of like a Sagittarius ascendant struggle with this too, because they have Gemini in the seventh house. So it's like there's a multiplicity there that's saying, it doesn't feel quite right when I'm trying to fit my energy into one thing. It's supposed to spread out a little bit, right? So Sagittarius ascendants can be naturally inclined towards polyamory, for example. Not to say that every Sagittarius ascendant is polyamorous by any means, but they're definitely inclined to it more so than other ascendants. And if other things in the chart support it, they can very naturally flow into it. For Leo ascendant, it's not, they can express themselves polyamorously, but really though, it's about polygamy, because Gemini is ruled by Mercury, which represents sort of like multiplicity, but there's like a hot potato thing that Mercury does, which is kind of like, oh, this is fun, and now I'm bored, and this is fun, and then now I'm bored, right? So Mercury is always kind of like on to the next thing. It's novelty. Saturn is about keeping something, but Aquarius is ruled by both Saturn and Rahu. And Rahu is something that can also bring in multiplicity. So if you have Venus conjunct Rahu, for example, you can have someone who's living in a polygamous marriage. So, with this dynamic going on here, essentially, the placement is saying, I want a group of spouses, and I want to keep them, right? So Mercury is like, I want a group of mates, and I want to hop between them all, and maybe have some of them, maybe let some of them go, and I don't really mind. We can all kind of wiggle around and do all kinds of stuff. Leo ascendants are like, no, actually, I want all of them to be mine. You're all mine, right? So basically, it's a harem, is actually what the chart of a Leo ascendant says. It's like a harem dynamic for the males in particular. Now, I'm not saying that every Leo ascendant needs a harem or wants a harem or deserves a harem or whatever. But I'm saying that is what the archetype is expressing. Like, for example, if you look at the chart of a Cancer ascendant, you can very easily say this person has traditional marriage in the seventh house. It's traditional, like, especially in the chart of a female Cancer ascendant, that's a traditional husband she's looking for. In the chart of a Capricorn ascendant male, he's looking for a traditional wife. All right. So with a Leo, their archetype is kind of like harem, polygamy. But there's more to this than that. That is one way it can express itself, but polygamy is not particularly common in our society nowadays. So one of the ways that this can express itself nowadays is by having a monogamous marriage with a partner who is very well connected. All right, so it could be someone who has a very expansive network circle. It could be someone who's into social media. It could be someone who is some type of pillar of the community in some way. Very well known, very well connected. It'll also be somebody oftentimes who is rather wealthy, someone who comes to them and kind of brings in this money oftentimes, but also sort of like it's more fundamental than money. It's really about connecting the Leo ascendant with their hopes, dreams, and wishes. The mate of a Leo ascendant is some way sort of like the crystallized ideal of their hopes, dreams, and wishes. You might say that's true for everybody, and in some sense you're right about that, but it's extra for Leo ascendant. Okay, so like there's people who like, okay, everybody, you could say maybe everybody loves romance movies, right? To some extent, like you love romance movies, okay? But if like maybe I like them this much, maybe I like them this much. Leo ascendants are the ones that like them the most. Okay, they're like, I am the romance movie. I live for it. I show up here. You can put this as my address. Okay, it's the romance story. So for them, the partner is like the romance ideal, but really that. You know, it's not just like a little bit of that, and then you've got your practical life, and you got your things. It's like, no, it's really about the romance. It's like it's about the story. It's about that wish, that dream, right? It's very potent. So it could be that, say, for example, the Leo ascendant is a dancer, and the person that they end up marrying is like a manager or somebody who is, you know, just very well connected in their field, and they help them to become the most successful dancer because they have all the connections, which help them to get all the right dances and, you know, get all the right venues and stuff like that. And so there's a complementariness that comes in with this, where Leo ascendants, they often may think that they want someone who's exactly like themselves, but they may get someone who's somewhat opposite themselves or somewhat different than themselves in some way. It may be that the core element is the same, but there's still some distinct differences in expression. So it could be that, you know, one person's a politician and another person is like, you know, sworn off politics, you know, and it could be that like, you know, one person is a dancer and an artist, and another person is a business manager, you know. There'll be some difference here, you know, and one of the challenges is how do you make that harmonizing, because Leo's kind of expecting someone to be exactly like them, or someone who's like really feeding into their dynamic a lot and like, you know, really nourishing them. But then Aquarius is kind of cold too, because it's ruled by Saturn, and Saturn and Sun and Rahu and Sun are not, they don't get along well. Okay, so overcoming these things can be quite challenging. But I think that one of the ways that this kind of begins to smooth out is when a Leo ascendant has in their mind a genuine sense of purpose. And that purpose is of benefit to the world. And oftentimes, this divine purpose that they have, their partner can tie into that. And if the partner ties into their benevolent mission to help the world, that can glue those two things together in a really good way. So is it like, is the Leo ascendant being selfish and being like, it's all about me? Or are they like embodying that sort of actual Magha energy, that actual core of what Leo is, and being like, well, this is beyond me. I'm a conduit in a way, or I'm here, blessed and granted with this sort of divine position in order to carry this out. But this is actually kind of like an act of God that's going on. And if they kind of come at it from this higher place, and there's that selflessness at the core of the glamour and the core of the self energy, then the Aquarius person can connect into that better. There can be a purpose in that, right? Because the Aquarius person is going to be mindful of how the world is benefited. How is this benefiting everybody? And so if the Leo doesn't understand how to benefit everybody and they're being selfish, their relationships will fall apart over and over again. So I can go deeper into these things. The video's getting a bit long, so I'm going to try to move along here. Eighth house is Pisces for Leo ascendants. This is fascinating because here, kings, they need to know what's going on in the hidden places, right? They want to know, like, where the hidden dangers are, where the accidents might be, things like that, right? There's a tendency for Leo ascendants to potentially succumb to tyranny, to becoming tyrannical. You see that with the Scorpio in the fourth house as well, to where you have fourth house being the homeland, and you imagine the Leo ascendant being the king who rules over a homeland, and then you have the sign of control there. So the temptation is like, okay, Scorpio represents loving something intimately and connecting with something intimately, but it also can represent controlling and possessive in a way that actually hurts the thing, right? You can be possessive in a good way, like, this is my child, this is my wife, I love them, I'm gonna take care of them, right? And then there's like, there's that extra, or not extra, but like the way where it can get toxic, right? So kind of the toxic side of that is like controlling the population, controlling the homeland, trying to manipulate it, right, in that negative way. So with Pisces in the eighth house here, what we're seeing is that when the Leo ascendant is engaging in the scorpionic waters, in the hidden things, because eighth house represents everything from occultism. It also represents things like the CIA and spies and all kinds of things like that. And misuse of the eighth house is one of the most common sins of leaders in today's times. Right? There's a lot of sins, but misuse of the eighth house energies is a big one. All right. So here you see that the king's actual archetype is to have Pisces in the eighth house, which means that when you are immersing yourself in those waters and learning about those things, you do so with purity of spirit. Pisces is selfless energy. It's the refinement of the alchemical processes. Where we go, it's the spirit world. It's like when someone has planets in Pisces, particularly in Revati Nakshatra, it's like they've completely purified themselves spiritually in that particular area. So what they're saying is the eighth house mind, the dark shadow elements of the king must be pure. It must be pure of mind. The part of his mind that connives and that thinks, well, I could do this and no one would know and it'd be secret and I can get away with it and I can do it like this, blah, 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 blah. If that's not pure, that damages the Leo ascendant, right? So the purity is necessary for them to properly remain in balance and to properly receive the blessings that come with being a Leo ascendant. This also, of course, naturally gives them an inclination to research these things, the occult, hidden knowledge, depth psychology, things of this nature, hidden things. They'll tend to have knowledge of them. Oftentimes, their knowledge will be deep and experiential. So Leo ascendants aren't necessarily the type to learn, say, a type of occultism by just sitting there reading books all the time. They're the type to maybe have never read a book, but they dream about it, they meditate about it, they just kind of have a knowing and they kind of follow that knowing in their own unique creative way, and it leads them to an occult knowledge, and they have it and they're like, boom. So they find occult knowledge without having to think with their Mercury brain. All right. This also means that their dreams sometimes can be quite intense. They can have dreams with a lot of purpose, dreams with a lot of destiny. Like they can have dreams where they're even in danger at times. Though that depends on the rest of the chart and what you got going on there. But what you'll definitely see is a profundity to their wisdom and a natural talent for the occult. Right? Their talent for the occult can be so good that it may seem like they're formally trained or that they're from some type of lineage when it comes to them using their abilities, even if they just kind of like do it on the fly. Um, they often can kind of have memories and they'll act out and gain the abilities that they had from their other lives or from their deep subconscious mind, and then they'll be able to like play them out in reality. So very, very powerful placement. Aries in the ninth house makes the Leo ascendants very fervent about their beliefs. So when they do believe something, they are very commanding about it. They tend to try to be very convincing about it to sort of spread the fire of their belief around. So they'll want to bring people over to their side when they have an understanding of something. Another thing is that the ninth house is sort of like a house that pertains to the meaning of life for that person. What is their concept or what is their feeling about what the meaning of life is? So for Leo ascendants, the meaning of life has something to do with like achievement or accomplishment, but it's a little different because that's also Capricorn. It's kind of like overcoming obstacles, conquering something, rising above something, like getting to the top of some kind of mountain is almost a religious activity for Leo ascendants. It's like when they kind of dream, like, you know, what is my life about? Like, what is this? What am I here for? What is the meaning of life? And they're like, oh, when I'm standing on top of that mountain, I know that I'm the best, and everyone's cheering, and they're like, yes. And I'm like, yes. That's the Leo ascendant's kind of idea of the meaning of life to some degree. Now, of course, this is deeply influenced by Mars, for example. If you have Mars that's in the ninth house or in the 12th house, or, you know, it's going to be very different than if it's in 4 or in 1 or in 8 or something like that. It's going to change what that meaning of life is. If you have something aspecting it, if you have something conjunct the Lord, things like that will shift this dynamic up quite a bit. But in general, you know, you will find that type of a dynamic in some way. So even if it's like, you know, say they're part of a normal formal religion, it'll almost be like to them they'll want to winning competition will be a part of their religious ideal. So they'll be competing in some way with other in the religious sphere. So it could be that for them they become like a you know, a Christian or something like that, and then they go and they're always debating with Muslims, and they're like spreading the fire of their belief, and they're out there and they're kind of like the warrior for their belief. That kind of thing you can see. Another thing is that this can really inspire people, really motivate people. All right, you've got like this is kind of like, because ninth house has to do with teachers, right? So Aries is kind of like a boot camp teacher or a military teacher or a sports coach type of teacher or a workout coach, like a physical therapist. They're kind of pushing you. They're like, yeah, you can do 3 more reps. You can do 10 more reps. Yeah, keep going. David Goggins. You know what I mean? So they are fantastic at doing that kind of thing. So they can be great motivational speakers. They can be great just inspirations in some way. All right. So 10th house is Taurus. And this is kind of, there's some bread and butter kind of elements of the Leo ascendant here, because the 10th house represents the thing that it's like what all society is seeing about you. It's what all society recognizes you as. So what all society recognizes the Leo as is wealthy, prosperous, fertile, you know, just blessed, just the abundance is just pouring off of them. So if you think about how people used to think of royalty or how they think of celebrities and nobles and stuff like that, they think, wow, they're so wealthy. Wow, they dress so nice. They eat the best food. They enjoy themselves the most. They have the most fun. That's all the stuff Taurus loves to do. So Leo ascendant is kind of like it's sort of like the celebrity ideal to some extent. It's like that's what they embody that archetype to some extent. So even if a Leo ascendant is broke and they don't have much money, they will seem wealthy to everybody. They could literally be walking around with no money in their bank account, but they got a fancy robe on and they're just walking and they're just like, everyone's like, ooh, it's the king, it's the queen. And they're just walking like, yeah. And they'll still get the same credit as if they've got $1 million in their bank account. That's how it works. That's how it works. So The magic of that is powerful. And so when it comes to their reputation in society, very difficult to damage the reputation of a Leo ascendant. Very difficult. You know what I mean? It's just like it's fixed to earth and it's prosperity energy. Okay, it's not going much of anywhere. So it's not like you got somebody with Scorpio or something in the 10th house. It's like just it's like something bad happens in that person's life. Everybody knows about it, and then that person's reputation is messed up, or there's other ways that can go, but that's one way it could express itself. Um, Here, it's like the reputation's solid. It's like people feel that Libra energy and the likability that they gain. Like, it's like, say, for example, 10 people like them in society. All right, there's going to be a core among those 10 people, maybe five, maybe four, that just they're going to keep liking them no matter what. They're going to just kind of consistently like them. And then you take it out, you now 1,000 people like you. Well, there's going to be like 400 of those people that just kind of really, really like you. And so it's like they have this ability to almost kind of like secure a following. It's like secure, it's like fixed to earth. It's like people will like them and then they'll keep liking them. Oops. They'll keep liking them. So that's a very interesting dynamic to this. It's very, very good for reputation. And when it comes to their career, it'll be a career that will make them feel good while they're doing it, right? If they can't feel like they're like skating on silk and it's butter on bread while they're going about their career, if it doesn't feel like it's benefiting them constantly as they're going, they're not really going to be interested. So they need to be paid well. They'll kind of have all these little caveats like, oh, I want, this in my trailer. I want this. I want that. I want this. Blah, blah, blah. And if they have everything just right and they're kind of like, okay, cool, I'll take this job because they made everything the way I like it. So they can be like, one octave of this would be kind of like, you got that actor who's like sitting in his trailer and he's like, bring me my diet soda. Where's my diet soda? I'm the most important person here. Where's the soda? They can have that kind of thing going on a little bit. But most of the time, it'll just be very, very luxurious, will be a word. But another little interesting thing about the 10th house is that, again, we have that Venus ruled energy here, and that there's a bit of a struggle with the sun rulership in the Venus. So even though they're well liked by society and by the public and they have a good reputation, they can sometimes often have conflicts with authorities. So there's that. Like they don't really work well under people. It'll burn off their stuff. It'll burn off the Leo ascendant's energy, and they won't like it. So they kind of have to be entrepreneurs. They have to create something of their own and do their own thing, and then they'll do really well. So the 11th house puts Gemini here, and this, of course, gives the Leo ascendant the ability to communicate very effectively to a very large group of people. So again, what does the king do? The king is able to see and communicate with the masses. All right, so here we have Gemini gives the person the ability to do that. So a lot of social influence comes with Leo ascendant, and when they really say they're a social influencer, they get on YouTube or something like that, they start talking. They have this ability, like through their communication, to really just like reach a lot of people and to influence a lot of people. You can see more specifically about how that person is going to be able to do that, how successful they'll be by looking at Mercury. You can definitely see that there. And then there's a very interesting link here between Mercury ruling both the 11th and the second houses of wealth, both the house of incoming gains in the 11th and the house of fixed assets here. So the condition of Mercury is really essential for the wealth of a Leo ascendant. It's very important to study Mercury, see what Mercury's doing, see if you can do anything to make that better. If you are wanting to improve your financial condition as a Leo ascendant. So you may need to become more calculative. You may need to start talking to people more about money and making connections. Like there may be certain actions you need to take to engage the Mercury energy, but and cultivate it healthily. But that would be one of the pathways forward for helping with that kind of a situation. And in the 12th house here, we have Cancer. And so this is the soft, squishy spot for Leo ascendants. All of their dynamism, bravado, excellence, charmingness, and beauty and or handsomeness. All these wonderful things that they always kind of portray themselves without having vulnerabilities, or they're always kind of being able to rise above, and like they have this thing where they kind of won't like act like they need anybody. They're like, you know, if somebody leaves them in a relationship or whatever, they're like, I'm fine, you know, I'm awesome, no problem, I can keep going. But they have a soft spot too. And here, the thing that they often sacrifice in order to, because the 12th house, you have to understand, among 12th house is many things. It's the spirit world, it's our dream state, it's altered states of consciousness, it's sort of like losses or charity or giving things away. But it's also that thing we kind of push to the background so that we can embody our ascendant. Okay, so in the case of say a Libra ascendant, they have Virgo in the 12th house. They'll sometimes push aside their desire to be critical and detail oriented and knick-knack in order to be so diplomatic and get along with everybody and maintain harmony. Being critical and trying to perfect everything and making sure everything's harmonious don't always go together, which is why people who try to problem solve and be Virgos sometimes make other people annoyed, even though they're just literally trying to help. Okay, so that kind of energy can be there. They have to kind of push that aside a little bit to fully embody Libra energy. So in the same way, and again, that's not the only way that plays out. I'm just using one example, and it's not to say every Libra ascendant does that or does that all the time, but there's other ways it plays out. But so for a Leo ascendant, they sometimes they essentially push the need to, or the ability and their desire to connect with people in an intimate, vulnerable way, to say like, I need you. Cancer says that. Cancer's like, I need you. Please stay with me. Please come over here, cuddle me. I need you. Okay, I feel better now. That's what Cancer wants. That's what Leo wants deep down. But they often don't admit to themselves that's what they want. They're like, I'm fine. I'm fine. Kind of like they have a little bit of a like a lone lion thing going on, or like a tiger. You know, I think tigers are more solitary. Lions have prides, but tigers or jaguars, they'll kind of just wander the forest like, I'm fine. So they'll have that, you know, and most of the time they'll believe it. They'll really be in that vibe. But there'll be their moments in there when they're by themselves, they're isolated in their 12th house, and then all their Cancerian emotions will come out, and they're just like, actually, I need hugs. I really need hugs. I need cuddles. I need cupcakes and a massage. And I need to cry and someone hold me, and I want my mom. All that stuff comes out in their subconscious. All right. So coming to terms with that for a Leo ascendant is very, very balancing for them. It will really heal them, because Leo ascendants can have this energy where they can kind of go and go and go and go like the Energizer bunny, but like kind of without putting oil inside their engine. So if you don't put oil inside your engine after enough period of time, it's going to kind of burn out, you know? So Leo ascendants can sometimes do that to some extent. Not to say they actually burn out, but they will feel the wear and tear. They're like, I have been at this game a long time, you know? So if you want to avoid the kind of aging that comes with that for the very active Leo ascendants, they've really got to kind of get squishy. Really got to get squishy. Really got to get in touch with their feminine side, with their vulnerability. They got to find some people who they can be vulnerable with. And it's challenging because it's in the 12th house of being isolated. But if they don't have that, they'll have this underlying current of loneliness, even if they're celebrated by thousands of people. So another thing is that when they tend to enter into altered states of consciousness, that is also when this energy can come out. So you can often find maybe if they drink, they might cry. They might, you know, get super cuddly. They might let their guard down more, you know, and so that can really be the time that they're kind of more loosened up to really kind of heal their inner child, like heal their relationship to the divine feminine, heal their relationship with their mother, and their whole life will get a lot brighter as a result of that. So I hope you found this video helpful. This one's a bit longer than the other ones I've made thus far. Honestly, I could probably make 3-4 hour videos easy on each of these ascendants. So I may be making extended or kind of like additional videos, getting deeper into them in the future. But thank you for watching this all the way through. And I look forward to hearing your comments and things like that posted below. And I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Take care.